China. I would make another important point on this, which is that there's been many complaints about the fact that there are a lot of products that are sold on Amazon that are actually rip-offs of American products that are then stolen by China, and then they take our IP and they put them into products and try to undersell our manufacturers. So,
what is the end goal of the China tariffs right now? Is the idea to open up the Chinese markets through a deal to a better market for exporting American goods to China, or is it a reconfiguration of global trade in a way that isolates China from free countries?
No. So China is a unique situation, obviously. The president has talked at length about what happened to us economically since China's entrance into the World Trade Organization and the trillions and trillions of dollars of trade deficits that we've racked up with China over the period of that time, and what that's meant for our national security, what that's meant for our economic security, what that's meant for our supply chains. Obviously, right now, the Secretary of the Treasury is in the process of developing a plan that will answer the questions that you're talking about, but the president's goals have been very clear on these points, which is that he is not going to allow China to continue to steal our intellectual property, to continue to illegally dump and subsidize their goods in our markets, to manipulate their currency, to rack up an unsustainable trade deficit. We need to have a trade relationship with China that does not do harm to our nation's economic and national security. And that has to be the guidepost of any objective. At the same time, tariffs will bring significant revenue into this country that will allow us to pursue our dramatic plan of tax cuts and reforms.
Awesome, great. Bloomberg, go ahead.
Hi, first as well, similar to that question, I'm curious, Kevin Hassett went on CNBC this morning and said that they were expecting some sort of news on tariffs by the end of the day. Do you have any insight into that?
I don't want to get ahead of any announcement, but I'll just reiterate that right now, countries from all over the world, because of President Trump's leadership, are desperate and dying to make trade deals with the United States. We're going to evaluate each of those deals, and President Trump is personally involved in making sure that these negotiations serve only one interest, which is the interest of the United States of America, and we'll end up with a deal in these cases where, yes, the other countries, obviously, will have their own demands and their own interests, but nothing will go into effect that doesn't serve the interests of America and the American people.
Those, of course, because that's the topic that you're here to speak about, but I want to ask you one other question about the topic of prices. We heard from the president on this just yesterday, right now, on prices and the risk that there could be some short-term, as he said, shortages. He was referring specifically to dolls. What do you tell Americans right now, Stephen, who say they can't afford to, in the president's words, be patient? Americans who voted for President Trump on his promise that he would lower prices across the board on day one.
But he did lower prices across the board on day one.
Well, grocery prices last month went up 0.4%, of course. So I mean, just across the board, not exclusively eggs.
Inflation, as you would acknowledge, is down substantially. Gas prices are down substantially. The new GDP report showed a 22% record increase in investment in the United States of America. So all of the, and don't even, egg prices, of course, which was all you guys talked about for a few days, I think are down like 80%. The reality is that we can either surrender economically to China, or we can reclaim and reshore our manufacturing base and our industrial needs. And it's not just China. In the event of any national emergency, this is the president's first duty as commander-in-chief. In the event of any national emergency, we cannot be reliant on foreign countries for steel, aluminum, energy, technology, any of the essential components that we need to keep this country running. He is fulfilling his duty as commander-in-chief that every president before him had failed to fulfill or even actively betrayed. And despite inheriting all of this, as I mentioned, inflation down, jobs up, and particularly, by the way, jobs for American workers. So for the first time, you look at these jobs reports, the government workers are going down, which artificially, of course, increased previous job totals. The employment of non-citizens is going down. The employment of American citizens is exploding. Remember, all the job gains during the Biden administration, so-called gains, on net were for foreign workers. So if you look at the stock of American workers over his whole administration, they lost jobs on net. So if you're an American worker, you lived through 4 years of a Biden depression. That was the economic reality that now the President Trump is rescuing. And again, if you make your product in America, there's no tariff. And as we develop advanced manufacturing techniques, increased AI, increased robotics, it'll be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to manufacture in America.
But to be clear, you said that prices have gone down across the board. The president himself acknowledged that on toys you may end up paying, on dolls he was referring to, you may end up paying a little bit more right now. So in terms of
He was making the point that I think almost every American consumer agrees with. What if they had a choice between and I'm a parent of young children. You had a choice between a doll from China that might have, say, lead paint in it, that is not as well constructed as a doll made in America that has a higher environmental and regulatory standard and that is made to a higher degree of quality. And those two products are both on Amazon. That yes, you probably would be willing to pay more for a better made American product. But here's the key point. With the tax cuts, the regulation cuts, the energy price decrease, and everything else that President Trump is doing to unleash this era of American prosperity and prevent the road we were on to get off that road of financial ruin and doom, means that it will be cheaper than ever to make and manufacture in America. I think that answers.
Just to add on the Kamala Harris point, I think I speak for everyone at the White House. We encourage Kamala Harris to continue going out and do speaking engagements. You'll hear from the president at 11 o'clock. See you guys later.